1939 in Europe, and there's this angry, rejected artist, let's call him Adolf Hitler, who runs a brutal nutcracker party on Germany. So one day in September, he thought to himself, if we want to take over our world, we need to get much better instead of worse. To which he said to himself yet again, I've got it. I'll just go and invade Poland to begin my world domination. And invade all of Poland he did. This triggered a war. The United Kingdom and France were not happy with what Hitler was doing, so they declared war on him, but took little action. This was called the Phony War, where everyone sat around not doing much. Meanwhile, Adolf, ever the impatient dictator, was itching for more action. He couldn't stand the phony war. It wasn't nearly theatrical enough for him. He envisioned a grand spectacle of conquest, not a polite staring contest. So he planned something the next year. He decided to skip dessert and go straight for the main course. He looked at the map of Europe, his finger tracing a path toward the west, but France was still on the map. He planned to make it a puppet state. They think their Maginot Line will protect them? Ha, we'll go round it. The year is 1940. In all of the nutcracker-occupied nations, the people suffered. It was persecution, forced labor, executions for anyone who spoke out against the occupiers, including the targeting of ethnic minorities. Remember when Germany didn't have an air force? Well, this time, the Luftwaffe had the power of blitzkrieg at their beck and call, and in July of 1940, Hitler had ordered a new plan: we bomb the United Kingdom, overthrow the monarchy, then we take over the rest of the world and eat Pfefferpothast every day. Everything else Germany did was a violation of the Geneva and Hague Conventions. The German held a meeting and decided that the country to be jerks. But Germany's not alone. There was also Bruschetta Machiavelli of Italy and the Emperor of Japan, who formed the Axis powers. Back over in the UK, the Germans are already in London. And that's it. It's all over. But then it happened. The RAF quickly came onto the scene and pushed the Luftwaffe in October. But in June, France became a German puppet state, and in the next year of brutal conflict and violence, a new country would take part into the fighting. I wonder who it could be. It was in 1941 when the Japanese really began their conquest. They annexed Guam, the Gilbert Islands, Wake Island, Korea, Hong Kong, and the Philippines. They forced Thailand to join them so they can march their troops directly into Malaysia. They swept through Singapore, Borneo, Sumatra, Rangoon, and they were now threatening northern Australia and the borders of India. So here's the situation. Evil Germany, fascist Italy, and war criminal Japan, they all feel hostility towards the Allies. In June 1941, Russia got involved in the war during Operation Barbarossa, and with the communism now in the war, it was only a matter of time before all hell broke loose a few months later. But over in Africa, dozens of countries wanted to free France, except for Gabon, which was taken by military force. Now, where was I? Oh, right. On December 7th, 1941, Japan had decided to make a very risky move. It had planned this attack for months. It wanted to attack the naval base of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. But there was a problem. The United States, one of the world's favorite countries of all time, was in the naval base at Pearl Harbor. But Japan boasted about being better and bombed Pearl Harbor anyway. The USA vowed revenge later that day, and it was at this moment that the Japanese knew. They know they fucked up.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
So yeah, that happened. The Japanese accidentally awakened a sleeping giant. The USA, now armed with 460 millimeter cannons for their big boats, were now heading to show the Japanese the true meaning of freedom. Lots of people were lost at sea, kamikaze bombers were set up, and the entire Pacific Ocean had been turned into a giant fucking war zone. All because the Japanese angered Roosevelt. They made a big mistake, and now they shall regret it. 1942 was the most violent and unforgiving chapter in the story of the Second World War. Brutal battles followed after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, including Midway Atoll, Egypt, and Stalingrad, just to name a few. Once the Japs entered Vietnam, the USA started active conscription and sending dozens of young college boys from their homes to fight for the Eagles of America. There was also no draft lottery yet, because this is World War II and not the Vietnam War. Minor detail. Like I said, the conscription was compulsory for all the American boys, including George Herbert Walker Bush. Not this Bush, this is the one I was talking about. It's 1943 and a lot has happened. While the Russians were fighting hard thanks to the winter in Volgograd Oblast, the 4th Panzer Army, along with the Luftwaffe, they were all fucking around and doing all sorts of crazy shit. This was because Adolf Hitler, who was enraged after the highly controversial sinking of the Bismarck and an escape attempt from a camp orchestrated by the prisoners, which was eventually quelled, had found Russia to be the source of their problems, not to mention the fall of Italy's membership within the Axis powers. Back in the Pacific, the USA and the Japanese still had some beef with each other. There was the Battle of Tarawa, the Bismarck Sea, not to be confused with the German ship, and it was all plain sailing, surprisingly literal. It wasn't until the 30th of June that Winston Churchill, British Prime Minister, had recently ordered Anzac support to begin Operation Cartwheel, which they did. In Rabaul, most of the prisoners of war would be decapitated by the Japanese, tortured, and more other violent and atrocious things that would make YouTube's algorithm stop this video from existing in the first place. So I am not going to tell you exactly what happened, but you can search the many violent and brutal things the Japanese did. They were very brutal with their punishments, weren't they? Washington's finger also pointed to Germany as the aggressor. And of course, the fucking idiot's finger pointed back. Supreme Allied Commander and soon-to-be President Eisenhower called the British forces to train for D-Day. They had planned to take the city of Caen, but all they found was a French man handing out champagne. Their minds switched to Normandy because the beaches were much nicer. The soldiers were waiting for a decent day, and then on the 6th of June, 1944, Rommel, being the genocidal asshole that he was, he called upon the machine gun nest to strike fear into the morale of the Allies. He failed. As soon as the Allies won at the end of the day, the end of the Third Reich would soon come to be the following year. Timing was everything for Germany, Adolf Hitler, and the entire Nutcracker Party to try and end the battles on the Western Front as soon as possible. (1945) was the final year for World War II. With the Italians surrendered and Warsaw having been liberated, Adolf Hitler had realized that all hope has been lost. The Allies were closing in on Berlin, and the Red Army advanced in the east. They were the first to reach the German capital city. As soon as Germany realized that they had found their dreams of world domination to be crushed, all that was left for Mr. Hitler to do was to go out with a bang. He found a handgun, loaded a single bullet into the magazine, and once he pulled the trigger, extreme ideology and anti-Semitism, rejected from art school, his defeat in the previous World War, a political movement that treated him like a god, the man, the myth, the legend, Adolf Hitler. He was no more. The news had sparked celebration across the world. Victory in Europe was finally secured the next month. But the war wasn't over. While Italy and Germany surrendered, Japan refused to give up. The USA made the first nuclear weapons, and on the 6th of August, 1945, The little boy and fat man were used to target Hiroshima. Then on the 9th, it was Nagasaki. The cities were destroyed, and for the people living there, it was a terrible fate. But for Uncle Sam, it was to make Japan surrender by force. Although the USA and USSR would soon have a rivalry, there was still 75 million people killed during the war, and there was still peace. Alas, this is where our story concludes. The story of World War II must be told for all to learn.
Advance Britannia! Long live the cause of freedom! God save the King!